Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to Coach Powell Training and Development. This is Coach Powell. Why am I getting that feedback? Oh, I see why. I'm logged on in two places. I figured it out. Okay, outstanding. I think I fixed the problem. This is Coach Powell Training and Development. I'm so glad to be here today with you all with an exciting new episode as we continue understanding the deeper development of the VisionQuest 90 process that I created more than 20 years ago to help entrepreneurs and business leaders take a deeper dive into what they consider success, what they consider advancement, and how they could use the steps that we have previously thought were only useful in certain areas to really benefit them in ways that they now get to thrive instead of just being productive and instead of just achieving, instead of just being successful, they get to thrive. So we've gone all the way around the wheel, and let me see if I can show you that. About the Vision Quest 90 process, right? We started out talking about vision, mission, the partners that you need to develop, the goals that you need to achieve. And we're now in the section where we're discussing and exploring habits, the kinds of habits that matter most to anyone, whether you're a business executive or you're a personal solo entrepreneur, whether you are starting a brand new business or you're continuing an existing business proposition. What it is to thrive, even in your habits. And today specifically, we're going to talk about some of the gifts that have been taught to us over the years by the great spiritual gurus who've talked from every spiritual background you can imagine, from the great Buddhist traditions, the Sikh traditions, the traditions found in Islam and Judaism, as well as those that are found in my personal favorite, Christianity. And we're going to talk about how all of these ideas and concepts collide to create a better opportunity for you as a leader, and as a communicator, as a developer of any type of entrepreneurial activities, how improving your spiritual practice affects your habits. So now the question is, when it comes to habits, we understand, and we've always understood that habits are the fundamental basis of how we define ourselves in terms of the activities that we do on a regular, consistent basis. What we do every single day, what we do every single week, kind of defines our life and how we're going to lead our life and what our life is ultimately going to mean. The sum total of all of the activities that we engage in life end up being what we're most measured against by those who remember us. And if we've been able to articulate and write down those thoughts and ideas as we began to explore them and talked about our experience, we get to make a meaningful impact that will last far beyond our lifetimes. The question is, how conscious are we of our ongoing daily, weekly, monthly, annually, biannual, quarterly habits? How how much of that are we actually aware of and doing what we can to intentionally control not just our actions, but our reactions? And how does all of our habitual development blend into our sense? I'll go back to this chart again. How does it blend to our sense of vision? How do our habits affect our vision? How do our vision affect our habits? How do our goals affect our habits? And how do our habits affect our goals? How do our partnerships and connections affect our habits? And how do our habits reflect back to them? How do our mission reflect our habits? You see, when you want to lay claim to this term called thriving or this term called fulfillment, you have to ask yourself the question, how does your life and how it plays out daily, weekly, monthly? How do the things that you get to do in all of those spaces inform your ability to have a claim to thriving? So we're going to talk about that thought process today from a spiritual perspective in terms of what we've learned from the great spiritual techniques and gurus that have been out there before Coach Powell existed. All right. And I will hopefully be able to share with you some of the things that work with me versus some of the things that have worked with others. And exact, as a coach for the last 20 years and coaching some of the best executives throughout the world, I have had the benefit of exploring with them some of the things they do that work and then sharing with them some of the things that I do that work. And then understanding from all the research that's out there, you know, what tools, techniques, strategies, habits that have been well adopted that actually work within the workplace, right? And today, I'm going to go through a lot of those. I try to get through all of them before I have to log out, um, and um, and have hopefully a great discussion with those of you who are listening and logged in that's going to benefit you all and help you accomplish some of the greater things that you want to accomplish in your business and in your life. Okay, so before I get started, let's do some administrative work here. This is a space of engagement. So I want to make sure that all of you understand that you are free to make comments. Please do. In the comment section, you are free to tell us who you are, where you're from. If you have a promotion coming up, if you have something that you want people to draw attention to, a website, an event, or any type of collaborative opportunity that you want to share out there as an entrepreneur, business leader, I want you to share that in the chat. Whether you are watching this live today, this is Friday, the 8th of August at around 3 p.m., or whether you're watching this later on, I want you to engage in the chat. I don't care if it's on Facebook, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Instagram, wherever you're watching this broadcast, I want you to engage in the chat. First of all, tell us who you are and where you're coming from. And I know that there's a delay. So there's going to be times when people put something in the chat that I don't immediately get a chance to respond to, but that does not mean that the community of watchers or I would say viewers are not engaged and watching, even if they're not watching and engaged in real time. So, because what happens when you put your information in the chat, you get a chance. Get a chance for people to give you a shout out, to respond back to you, all that kind of good stuff. And we create a community of engagement and a community of dialogue. That's super, super important to every viewer. The second thing I want you to do is, no matter where you're watching, give us a thumbs up, give us a like, give us an attaboy, share this content with other viewers. Because I've been doing this now since COVID. And I like to think that every episode, every week, I get incrementally better and better and better at doing this. But it is a passion for me. And it is something that I get so much out of, mostly from the feedback that comes from the listening audience. And so if you tell me you like that or you don't like that, or, but try to do me a favor and try to explain your thoughts, not just give me the thumbs up or the thumbs down, because that doesn't really help give me appropriate feedback. Try to give as much active feedback as possible. Understand I won't hold anything against you. I don't care who you are. And I hope no one else does. Either, because it's super important. Feedback is the mechanism, it is the juice that helps everyone grow. And so I'm a big believer in feedback. I walk it like I talk it. If you know some people or some ideas that I've shared here that resonate with you, feel free to explain what you're thinking and how that's going. Oh my God, my good buddy Leah is just chiming in. She's coming out from Monterey, California. It's so good to see you. Leah says, "Happy Friday, everyone." So it's so great to see you. Great to have you engaged, Leah. That's really, really important. Now she's all the way out in California. I'm on the East Coast. Okay, so she's playing in a whole different time zone than me. So nobody has an excuse, no matter what time zone, whether you're watching this live or watching this on demand later on. It really doesn't matter as long as you're engaged. That's the thing. So we're talking about habits. We're talking about spiritual habits today. And we're going to get into what the great ones have always said about the spiritual habits and how they have affected their abilities to grow and to achieve at super, super high levels. But more than achieving, what you have to understand when it comes to spiritual practice, sometimes the achievement that we're looking for is not the same in the context of the achievement that we talk about in our personal lives. And let me explain to that. Sometimes, in our business and personal life, we are expected to achieve at a certain rate or to produce whatever we produce at a certain rate because it really is to the benefit of someone else. That someone else might be a client, that someone else might be a boss, that someone else might be a director or supervisor. And those expectations of how we should and will perform tend to permeate our entire lives. We're taught from a very young age to try to do what we need to do to make our teachers happy, right? To try to do what we need to do to make our parents happy. For some reason, what we are able to produce and what we're able to contribute, what we're able to do on a regular, consistent basis somehow seems to be always ceded to someone else. And if they're not ceded to someone else, they're ceded to what we call our level of perfection, what we think perfection is, or excellence, or whatever word we're going to use that demonstrates in both internally to ourselves and externally to other people that this is good stuff. What we're producing and what we're introducing and what we're talking about and what we're doing mostly is good stuff. There is a lot of stress involved with the process of trying to achieve, trying to be excellent, trying to lead issues where we are considered to be perfect. So for most people who have a spiritual practice of any type, daily, ritualistic, weekly habits and practices that they have put in place, the reason that they want to perform and do good and do well at whatever they're doing is a little bit more than just trying to please our neighbors, our friends, our associates, the people that we get to work with or lead us, and so on and so forth. Because that reason then has a higher understanding of fulfillment, a higher understanding of thriving as dictated by the mandates of our spiritual practice. And so therefore, some of us are doing things because we want to do good in the eyes of God. Some of us are doing the things we're doing because we want to achieve entrance into that higher plane of existence where we get to be in nirvana. Some of us want to find that inner peace that's only available to those who are able to slow the pace of life down and get control of our feelings and how we participate and how we initiate those things. And they come through some of the greatest religious practice. All this idea of nirvana or inner peace or satisfaction or even joy comes from our personal ability to practice what we may have learned through our great spiritual traditions. Throughout the world, globally, it doesn't matter. Christianity, Buddhism, Judaism, Sikhism, Islam, the Taoism, all these things all say the same things. And here's what we learn from most religious texts and practices. They all converge on a few ideas that are consistent, which basically says that disciplined practice and whatever those spiritual practices shape your character, strengthen community, and deepen your spiritual life. So you can ask yourself what comes first. Does a meaningful practiced disciplined spiritual life affect all these things, your character, your ability to communicate and to be and to thrive within community? Or does your character and your ability to shape and strengthen community deepen your spiritual practice. Which comes first, chicken or the egg, right? We're always asking the question. Well, the question is, the answer is they both happen simultaneously, and one strengthens the other. And so the more you find yourself in the habit of good spiritual practice, doing good, experiencing or putting oneself out there for the greater good of others. The universe would call that being of benefit to others, being benevolent, so to speak, is something that you need to think about doing. I don't know how many of you all are practicing a business and doing your business with in mind something that's deeper, more meaningful than just making money or just winning an award or satisfying a goal that you may have had for yourself. Are you doing it for a greater purpose? Is there a sense of vision beyond oneself in what you do every day and how you do what you do every day? Is there a connection, almost a missionary zeal to what you do? In fact, I like to say what you get to do every single day, that you have focused on, that you have developed, that you have incorporated into your life. And so there are 10 great questions that I have developed, and I'm going to go through each of the 10 questions with you today. In fact, I'm going to see if I can't put these in the chat. They're probably not going to all come out because the chat only has enough room for certain things, but I'm going to put them in the chat for your future perusal, and hopefully you'll be able to get something out of there that's meaningful. Yeah, they all 10 of them came through. That's great. So you should be able to see, if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, you should be able to see all 10 of the questions. If you're watching this on LinkedIn, I will post those 10 questions after the show. Just remind me to do so, please. I will post those questions after the show, and so you'll be able to see those 10 questions in live action as you go through on LinkedIn or later on. So LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube will already have all the questions of the 10 questions there. Now, they don't come out in a nice format, but they're there. So you can check those questions out and you can read them if you want to take a deeper dive into this. As I finish creating the documents and the training profiles associated with this, I'm going to be putting it out there. So if you want to talk about, the 10 questions, I don't even know what I'm going to call them yet. But these 10 questions are questions that you could use. Right now, I'm calling them the 10 questions for the would-be righteous, but this probably some better title I'm going to give them later on. So if you're interested in those 10 questions, do me a favor and reach out to me and ask me for the 10 questions and via the chat, that'll come. It'll show up to me in my inbox or instant messenger somewhere, and I will respond. I promise. I'll give you the document where you can see all the illustrations and different things that this is built out of, and all the reference materials that come from all of the various different researches of all the religions. But the thing about these 10 questions is they're not just questions that you can ask yourself to begin to provide some awareness of how you're behaving. These are questions that you can turn into ways to rate yourself. Like, let's take just question number one. Question number one is, how often do you slip away into the stillness and listen to the universe for answers? How often do you slip away into the stillness and listen to the universe for answers? Now, you can flip that question into an affirmation statement, which would say, I slip away often into the quietness of life and listen to the universe for answers. How often do you do it? And you could say, okay, now how good are you at doing this every day? Right? You could rate yourself. I slip away and listen to the universe for answers well. And then you can rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10. right? You can say from 10 being the highest, I do this all the time, I'm great at this, I'm a masterful at this, to 1, I barely ever do this. I never do this, as a matter of fact, at the 1 level. And, that's it. But if you give yourself a rating, then you can then ask the question, well, what do I need to improve? If I'm a 3, what do I need to improve to get to a 5? What do I need to improve to get to a 10? Now, I do not suggest that you even try to get to a 10 in almost anything unless you're already at a 9, right? Here's why. If you try to move yourself too far, too fast in any one of the categories that we're going to discuss today, then you're going to find yourself bumping into a serious wall of negativity coming your way. And now I'm talking about from other people or situations. I'm talking about life itself makes it difficult for you to make these kinds of huge changes and these huge leaps all at once. Forget 10 of them, right? But I'm suggesting that you look at these questions and give yourself some awareness of where you are today and use them as tools to advance you to where you want to be or where you think you need to be based on your vision, your mission, your goals, the people that you're around, and what you're trying to achieve or attain in life, period. So let's go through the questions. Now you understand that all these questions can be turned around and flipped around to be a rating that you might give or an affirmation statement, all of which are important things to consider. I'm not gonna turn all these questions around for you. I'm assuming you can do that yourself. Okay, so here's one. How often do you slip away into the stillness and listen to the universe for answers? This is about taking the time daily, weekly, monthly to just be still. Just be quiet. Turn off all of the external noise around you and just focus on your internal mechanisms. Focus on what's inside of you. What is the internal voice that you are or you have put down basically because you're listening to all these outside voices dictating to you what you should be doing with your life and your time. And your life and your time are intertwined. There is no way to separate them, right? So if you think about it, how often are you just paying attention to you? How often are you just sitting quietly and engaging in thoughts about you? Don't try to think about nothing. That's really hard to do. And now there's some people who would suggest that as a part of spiritual practice, that is a great thing to meditate on, nothing. And as soon as you find yourself thinking about something else, you go try to figure out how to interact and get that back to nothing. It's very hard to think about nothing. But thinking about your inner voice, thinking about the things that the world is trying to communicate through you is a very important practice to being able to stay grounded and focused when life hits you in all kinds of different directions all day, every day. There's 1,000 emails and text messages and voice messages. And then there's, people who are demanding things of you and asking things of you and expecting things from you, even if they don't tell you that they're expecting things from you. You kind of know it because of what they've told you before, or how they've acted or reacted towards you. And so now that's other thing that's weighing on your mind, including getting to your own goals and things that you're trying to do for yourself. How difficult it is. It's easy to lose yourself, right? And all this. So very, 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 very the best people are able to spend some quiet time. There's a great story I've told many times over about George Washington Carver, who is, just one of the greatest scientific, agricultural geniuses that has ever existed in our nation. And I don't think without him, we would have an American farming system beyond the 1930s and 40s. It just wouldn't happen. George Washington Carver was so instrumental in helping farmers to reinvent crops in different directions and help to fertilize the land through crop rotation and keeping meaningful manufacturing ideas coming through the agricultural business. If it wasn't for him, a lot of that work would not have gotten done. And a lot of people wouldn't have benefited in that way. So it's very important that you learn how to do it. How do you George Washington Carver would get up at 4:30 in the morning and go walking in the woods and just pay attention to what God was trying to tell him in his own thoughts and ideas, right? And God was trying to tell them this is what plants do. And then he transferred that information into this is what I'm going to do in my laboratories and experiment. This is what I'm going to teach other farmers across the nation about what they should be doing with their agricultural opportunities with the land that they owned or had access to. Number two, do you keep the most meaningful scriptures and affirmations on auto dial all day? For many of you who follow me and work with me, you understand that I have daily affirmation statements. And they were built on some of my favorite scriptures. I've long since forgotten what the scriptures were, but the daily affirmation statements are right here in front of me every day in my planner. I've written them out, typed them out, and every day when I'm good, I won't say I do this all the time, and I'm going to get back to doing this more consistently and regularly, but every day I read them before I do my planning for the day, because it's important to me before I entertain everybody else's thoughts and everybody else's meanings, and every time somebody else wants to have a meeting with me or whatever it is they want to do, that I've put in my mind and in my day the highest thoughts that I've ever come up with, that I have ever developed. These are my ideas of what a good person is. Of course, based on, you know, the practices that I saw and watched and participated in growing up. And yeah, there's Christian practices that are all through all of that. But I found as I'm deepening my studies on spiritual practice that these same spiritual ideas and concepts ring through all the various major religions, and there is no difference really. They all point to being good. They all point to being benevolent. They all point to thinking higher thoughts than about oneself consistently and regularly, and in putting those in practice. And those practice we might call meditation, we may call prayer, we may call those practices, acts of benevolence based on gratitude. And you might do your gratitude journal. You may do all kinds of things, or your habit tracking in terms of your spiritual practice. You may pray 5 times a day. You may meditate 3 or 4 times a day. You may, once in the morning, whatever that is. You may think higher thoughts while you're exercising on your bike or taking a walk in the woods. There's no getting out of saying I don't have time to focus on higher things. I don't have time to focus on things that are good for me, that are good for the universe, that are good for the world. That doesn't float, because you're putting off what's greatest in humanity, your humanity. And I'm going to get off my soapbox and get back to the material. Okay, so number 3 is, do you have the habit of looking for the good and sharing it regularly and liberally seeking to earn your just rewards alongside others? What I found about this is how selfish it is to be benevolent. And it's selfish in a good way. Now, I'm not saying that you have to go all out and give everything you have to everyone. I mean, very few of us can be Mother Teresa, right? We don't have the resources, and we don't have the emotional capacity to do that to have that kind of benevolence. But I am saying everyone has something to share and something to give. Everyone. The question is, are you taking the time to find those that would benefit the most from what you have to share? Because it's easy to go, well, I'm great at this, or I have this talent, or I have this gift, or I have this money, but I can't find anybody, any good ways to share it with other people because they just don't exist. That is not true. That is you buying into the story. Some would say the devil has planted in you that there aren't people around that could benefit from your gifts, your talents, things that you have in excess, whatever that is. You should be seeking places to share that. Not just because it's going to be beneficial to them, but also because it's going to be beneficial to you immediately. When you do something good for others out of your storehouse, out of your uh, uh, greatest gifts and talents, right? It feels wonderful. It feels like this is what you were born to do. This is what you were meant to do. And it could easily, if you make a practice of it, become so infectious. You figure out ways that you're going to be rewarded. You don't just wait for the reward to come. You all kind of know what that reward is going to be. And so you just get better and better and better at that level of benevolence, at that level of sharing, at that level of benefiting others. And I will promise you, it's one of the greatest of all the things that these questions can help you practice. Benevolence is one. Do you have the habit of looking for the good that you have control over and then sharing it regularly? That's number 3. Number 4, do you celebrate every win while giving proper thanks for the circumstances that allow you to access the people and resources that you used? There is no win, there is no achievement, there is no success that any of us have had that we haven't been able to leverage and create that success off of leveraging the time, talent, and treasure of someone else. And when you are aware that you couldn't have done this without the information that someone else shared with you. You couldn't have done this without the team that you belong to. You couldn't have done this without the experience that was given to you through the circumstances of your job or your career or the books that you've read or whatever that was. So whatever it is you've achieved, you owe someone else the benefit. And so let's celebrate them. Let's celebrate them. Let's celebrate the opportunity. Let's celebrate the win. But more important, let's celebrate what created the win. Because that's about giving proper thanks. That's about showing real gratitude. And the more you're aware of it, that's why I highly suggest that everyone have a gratitude journal. At the end of every day, before your head hits the pillow, you write down the things that happen or you experienced in that day that you're grateful for. And I'm not talking about just being grateful that you woke up to the day. I'm talking about really, really examining how you participate and how you engage in every single interaction with every single thing, per person, place, or thing that you've engaged in throughout your day. And then ask yourself the question, how was that beneficial to you? How did that help you? Because here's the practice. If you become practices, the more aware you become of the good things that are happening in your life every day. It's easy to be aware of the negative things. It's easy to be aware of the setbacks. It's easy to be aware of the failures. But you have to intentionally increase your awareness about the beautiful, wonderful things that life unfolds and brings to you on a regular, consistent basis. If you do that well, then you're going to be the kind of person that other people look at and go, why are you so happy? I can't believe it. Whatever it is you're doing, I want some of that. And it's just by acknowledging the good stuff that's happening. That's why I love the gratitude journal. It helps me do number 4. And I get better and better and better and better at it every day. Number 5, I love this one. Is your regular, deeply committed practice such that you show up as your absolute best the majority of the time? Now, it's hard to be at our best all the time, right? At some point, somebody's going to say something that irks you, that takes you off of your positivity journey, right? Something's going to happen that you're going to see in the news that brings you a negative aura, or you're going to hear some bad news from a loved one. You lost someone, or maybe someone has personally hurt, harmed, or injured or endangered you in some way, shape, or form. And they did it intentionally, right? We've all got to go through those things every single day. There's something that's negative that's coming in our way, right? But if you are deeply committed, and that's why I do these affirmation statements. I try to do these affirmation statements every day and breathe them through every day. For the last, how old am I now? 59? I would say since I was about 23 years old, that's almost, we're approaching 60 years, close to 60 years. I've been, well, actually 40, but close to 40 years. I've been actually reviewing my affirmation statements, and I tweak them every once in a while. Every year I go through and ask, are these still relevant affirmation statements for me? And do I need to change or tweak them? And I very rarely change them because they're so close to my vision of who I want to be and who I believe God put me here to be. But they help me stay focused on being the person that I need to be in every situation. And those affirmation statements can help me by reading them regularly, deeply every day, and committing them to my thoughts and ideas as I'm doing my daily planning every day. Right? As I'm choosing which tasks that I'm going to bring to my top of my priority list, knowing that I can't get them all done. I probably will never get them all done. But am I working on the things that are most meaningful and beneficial to me and what I think God put me here to do on regular, consistent basis every day? As long as I'm doing that, I have a claim to what we call inner peace, satisfaction, happiness, thriving even, right? Because thriving is not dependent on me making, billions of dollars, and it's not dependent on me being able to, say I have all these material things. None of that's thriving to me, not in my world. I get how it is thriving to some people, but even in those people, they realize that if they don't share it, if they don't give it away, if they don't help others benefit from their largesse, so to speak, then they're leading very hollow, very shallow lives. Number 5. Oh, they did that one. Number 6. How often do you focus on constant prayer, fasting, and benevolence? These 3 things are some of the greatest tenets of Christian spiritual practice: prayer, fasting, and benevolence. Do you know what real prayer is? And what it's all about? It's not about um, asking for what you want. That's a part of it. But it's also about acknowledging the goodness and the great things that life has been brought to you. And understanding that those things, they didn't happen under your own energy. They happen under the energy of other people, and what the universe was put, how the universe put certain people and certain things. And some people would say bless you, some people would say they just those things, you got lucky, whatever it is you want to call it. It couldn't have happened just by you being you. There was an instance of a righteous intervention that happened that allowed you to achieve that success, that you should be sharing in gratitude in your prayer life, right? Fasting is not about just the latest diet plan, right? It's not about the latest diet fad that it's already proven, by the way. If you do fasting, and you're gonna be healthier, and you're gonna lose weight faster, you're gonna rebalance your metabolism, everything, because we overeat, and we eat the wrong times. And fasting is scientifically proven to be the best way to eat. It more closely related to the way we used to eat when we were nomadic, right? When we were on the plane. That's a whole different conversation. And then benevolence obviously is about sharing what you have, not to the detriment of yourself. Hello, I'm not saying share what you have so that you and your children can't eat, and you don't have a roof over your head, or you don't have a way to get from point A to point B, but you have extra. And there's places in everybody's life when there is some extra, and that's not just in terms of stuff, but it might be in terms of ability or talent or strength. You might be able to share your benevolence in that way. There's plenty of stories of how people have helped me do things that I couldn't do, left to my own devices, I wouldn't have had the idea. I wouldn't have had the ability. I wouldn't have had the talent. But people saw me struggling and jumped in to share their own talents, their own gifts, their own benefits. Maybe they were better at fixing cars, or maybe they were better at just being able to see the situation with a clear, level head. When I'm in panic state, or I'm in what they call threat state, right? And they're like, okay, you're just looking at this right now in this way, but in a minute, once you calm down, you'll be able to see that all you have to do is boom, 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 and then you move forward. And they were right. But without them being calm and steadfast in their perspective, I might have gone into a depression. Who knows, right? Number 7, love number 7. How well are you at following the Noble Eightfold Path as a habitual discipline? Now, this is a Buddhist tradition. And if you don't understand it, I'm going to suggest you go look it up, because the Noble Eightfold Path is 8 spiritual lessons and practices that good Buddhists practice regularly. And it helps them to become the people that they believe that they're supposed to be every day. So they're walking the life of righteousness daily. And it's affecting everything that they do, every business that they touch, every person that they lead, every interaction that they have with the world, the universe, even inanimate things are affected by the Noble Eightfold Path. It's a beautiful situation that I highly suggest that you look into and get more information. Google it, the Noble Eightfold Path. Number 8, does your focus and therefore your practice tend to be more on the blessing than the journey? Right? Some of us are doing what we do because we're trying to reach a goal. We're trying to reach an achievement. We're trying to do something where others will recognize us for whatever it is that we're doing. Some of us are doing the things that we do just because we believe that the things that we're doing are so right and so good that just in the doing is enough reward for us, right? So you have to ask yourself, where's your focus and therefore your practice? Is it on the achievement, the blessing, or is it on the journey, the practice, the ritual, the discipline? Where is it? Where's your focus? Now, there are practitioners of all kinds from everywhere you can think of, whether we're talking about sociology, economics, we're talking about technology, we're talking about legal practice, and all of them will give you an understanding of what it is that this discipline, this practice, whatever the industry is, whatever the environment is that you're talking about, there's a culture, there's an ethical practice, there's a belief system that's there to tell you the kinds of behavior that are acceptable and applauded within this discipline, within this industry, within this whatever. But are you focusing on the practice, or are you focusing on winning the award? Are you focusing on doing the things that you're supposed to be doing, or are you focused on achieving something that you think is the greatest level of achievement in that particular industry or environment? Those who focus on the practice tend to win those awards, right? Because they're getting better and better at the practice, at the ethical practice, at the moral practice, at the, and whatever ethics or moral is in that particular industry, right? You want to make sure you understand what it is. You can't just take your own ethical and moral thoughts into a group or an association of any type and say that they're wrong because they haven't adopted your ethics and your thoughts. You have to understand the synergy between your ethics and the ethics and thought practices of the particular industry that's involved with what you're doing. Because therein you understand why. You can ask that question. It's a beautiful thing about industries. There's a why for almost everything, because somebody either introduced it in an association meeting and somebody said yes, and that's how the bar association began these practices, or somebody, thought that this is a more an effective or efficient way to do things, and therefore the whole group adopted as the right way to go. And so that's how the CPA Association decides what is considered general accounting practices. generally acceptable accounting practices. Same thing for every industry. There's a group that is saying this is the moral and ethical behavior of this group. And sometimes that moral and ethical behavior is all about the survival of the group. And then you have to ask yourself the question, is there a need for this industry today? Is there a need for this group that is reflective of something great good on the greater advantage, greater good? That's why things are so slow sometimes when it comes to organizations, and because there's a practice that has to either be broken or changed in order for the whole group to then go, okay, we're going to adopt this new thought, this new practice. And lots of examples of what's going on today about how what we thought was the truth about this country and our constitution and yada 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 versus what other people think is appropriate based on our so-called constitution and rules of and ways of practices and thinking. And there are a lot of disagreements because we're working it out, but as long as we are in communication, we can work it out. If we're not in communication, we're just gonna argue and fight and focus on the wrong thing. So we were so used to focusing on, and I will say this from a UK and a USA, mostly Eurocentric perspective, we were usually focusing on the ends, and we use the ends as a justification of the means. And we will never really focus on the means because we stopped talking about the means. We stopped talking about the spiritual practice, and we say this nation is under God, but we didn't never talked about how and why and how that was going to work out when it's all said and done, right? So because we don't have an idea of how to get there, we're all thinking that we can get there from these various different means, and then we disagree on the practice, how, the culture, the day-to-day, how we're going to engage with one another and do things together and create the society that we think is then reflective of what we would say a nation under God would be reflective of. But again, I'm on my soapbox. I'm gonna get off and get back to the rules right here. So does your focus and therefore your practice tend to be more on the blessing than the journey? That's number 8. Number 9, how do you go about setting aside time daily and weekly for gratitude and reflection? We already talked about gratitude, but what is reflection? Reflection is looking back and not just trying to figure out or paying attention to what is in reality, not just about finding the good stuff, but finding what the reality is in the situation. Are you reflecting on your day? Are you reflecting on your experiences? Are you reflecting on those moments that allow you, even those critical moments that don't work out the way you thought they were going to work out? Are you bringing deep enough reflection on it so that you can accept what realities am I experiencing here that are absolutely real and I have to just accept them as what they are, or what is something I could have done something about but I didn't know enough to do something about it, but I now know enough to even go find out that maybe I should be going this direction versus that direction, and maybe I should be thinking about it differently. What am I doing, right? So reflection is about awareness. That's what it is. It's about becoming aware. And oftentimes we don't reflect until things are going wrong. But I'm going to suggest that you be in reflection of all things that are happening to you, good and bad, positive and negative, enlightening and confusing, right? Because the more reflective you are of the things that happen, the more you can begin to base your expectations and your assessments on reality and less on bias that may have happened because of whatever reason. As I get older, I start to realize where my biases really are. And, the assumptions that I make based on my biases are always wrong. And I have to make sure that I'm reflecting enough to be able to break through that bias and see, what the truth is, what really is going on. Not what I want to go on, what I assume is going on, what is really happening. And so, I'm always going to be a person that would say it's good to be woke. Let's be woke. Let's be aware. Let's not cast aside awareness as something bad because we're going to title it, give it a new title, call it wokeness, and all of a sudden it doesn't matter anymore because it's not real. But it is real. It's the only real thing that there is. Anyway, Number 10, number 9, let's read that again. How do you go about setting aside time daily and weekly for gratitude and reflection? Number 10, how do you use your daily prayer and or meditation to dramatically improve how you care for others? Again, that's back to benevolence. Are you thinking about who and where, who you could bless, who you can gift, who you could make lives, whose life you could make better every day? And I'm talking about outside of your role in your families and outside of your whatever role you have. You could be in a role that is automatically benevolent, right? Maybe you're a trustee or a deacon or an elder or a leader in some church movement, right? And inherent in that role is an ability to be benevolent. I'm not talking about the stuff that's in your automatically in your role. I'm talking about the stuff that's outside of the role. The stuff that you could do for somebody who's a stranger, a perfect stranger. Because that's how the universe begins to take a peek inside of what's going on in your life and see that it's possible for them. People that are in your current spiritual practice and are part of a group, organized spiritual practice, which is a religion, right? People who are part of that kind of automatically know this is the route we're all taking. You can help each other practice and help each other develop your practice. But to really bless the world and to really to break outside the universe, you got to allow others to peek in. And a good way to allow other people a peek into the benevolence that you're receiving and the blessings that you're receiving and the benevolence that you have available, I would say, is you got to invite them in. You got to identify them. Literally show them the blessing. Show them what you're willing to share, what you're willing to give. Let them see it and analyze it for themselves and ask the question, would this be good for you? But if they don't see it, if they don't experience it, then they can't really make that connection. Or if they make the connection without you, shame on you. Where were you? So think about, how you are sharing and finding ways to use your gifts outside of the traditional paths that are there in your roles or in your other organizational identification, because you guys can stroke each other's flesh all day long and back. You can pat each other on the back all day long, and that's good. It feels great. But if you really want to influence the organizations you belong to, the universities, the job opportunities, then you will have to figure out a way to shine that light on other people. Again, number 10, how do you use your daily prayer and or meditation to dramatically improve how you care for others? These are what I call the 10 questions of the righteous. They're based on Christianity. They're based on Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, Judaism, Sikhism. All of our major religions would all agree that if you improve what you're doing in these areas, you're going to identify a spiritual and moral anchor for yourself. You're going to establish a regular cadence that is daily, weekly, sometimes seasonal. You're going to use community and accountability to sustain your commitment to doing that same spiritual practice. And you're going to reflect on your progress and recalibrate what you need to recalibrate as you find it and as you need it. That's today's workshop. That's today's lesson. Those are today's thought processes. I would love it if you would share with me your ideas in any way, shape, or form about what we talked about today or anything else you want to discuss in the future. Your feedback is invaluable, and your ability to show up here. I see you, Irma. It's good to see you out there, Irma and Leah. Some of my favorite people are in the chat. I really appreciate you guys. And I really, really love that your attention you've chose to spend this time here with me. But we're going to sign off now. We're going to take it easy until next week. We're going to be broadcasting live from the mountains next week. We're going to be deepening this discussion as we wrap up the total philosophy of the VisionQuest 90 process. And hopefully you'll get an idea of what it means to have the kind of coach that I am, and jump on board. We'd love to have you. Talk to you soon. Bye bye.